Hi, I'm Kitsap County Commissioner Rob Gelder, and welcome to this episode of Commissioner's Corner, where we will be learning all about solid waste in Kitsap County. So stay tuned and you'll learn a lot. And joining me now is Pat Campbell, who is the manager for our Solid Waste Division in Public Works. Thanks so much for being here today.
Well, absolutely, Rob. Thank you for having us.
So when we think about solid waste, it's what is that for the average Joe?
Okay, for the average Joe or Jane, solid waste is garbage. You know, it is not to be confused with what sewer division handles. It is garbage, trash, that kind of thing. So one of our goals is to properly manage solid waste, which means keeping those things away from the solid waste stream that belong somewhere else. So the hazardous waste, recyclables, other things that can be diverted, managing all those things properly so that they don't have to make the long trip that our waste takes to Columbia Ridge in Arlington, Oregon.
So I know some people subscribe to curbside pickup.
Yep.
Is that a requirement? I mean, we're at one of our recycling and garbage facilities.
That's correct. That's correct. So curbside service actually is not a county function at all. It's one of the things that we don't handle as part of the solid waste management system. It is actually regulated by the Utilities and Transportation Commission. It is not a mandatory service in Kitsap County, although we do strongly recommend it. It is probably the most sound environmental way for people to handle their regular household garbage, is to have it picked up by a commercial hauler. That being said, we do have this recycling and garbage facility. There's this one in Silverdale, there's one in Hansville, and also one in Olalla, for people who might have extra loads, things like, you know, you've done a major cleanup or you've just had a big party or whatever and you have lots of extra waste.
I know that's how I use it. I have curbside pickup, but there are those larger, bulkier things that this is the perfect location to come not too far from home.
Yep.
So, great.
Right.
So I'd like to have an opportunity to sort of check out what's happening here.
Absolutely. We have staff ready to tell you about the things they do and the job that they do for our citizens.
Okay, great. Well, let's go check it out.
Okay, thank you.
So what's happening here at the garbage and recycling facility? As we have customers come up, they've got choices to make. Go to recycling, go over here to make a deposit as part of the garbage flow.
Right. You know, come in and try to separate your load is a good, you know, first thing you want to do. Make sure that it's secured. Otherwise, the police, the sheriff, or us could fine you a slight fee. So that's one of the main things. And then just, you know, follow the directions that we will kind of lay out for you, and they're all written down. And other than that, it's a pretty easy thing to do as far as your trash recycling and dumping. We try to push curbside. It's very simple and it's cheaper. And but when you do have to come here, this is a great alternative.
So I understand, though, there's a difference in terms of charges here at one of the recycling garbage facilities versus if they went to the Olympic View transfer station.
They're by weight only there. Here we go by volume because it has to be hauled away. So you're going to go by the cubic yard, which there's a fee for that, and then up from the cubic yard, or we go by a 32-gallon garbage can container. And then we gauge everything as to be 1 can, 2 can, 3 cans. So as they're paying and they're coming through, we're gonna say, okay, sir, you have 5 cans today. And so the first can's $10, after that they're $2.50 a can. It's a pretty set fee, and it's pretty economical also. We will not take the hazardous waste. We will not take paints, liquids, tires. Televisions are for recycle at a different business. Light bulbs, certain light bulbs we don't take. But pretty much else, this is a one-stop. We'll take motor oil, cooking oil, batteries, many things. Antifreeze, appliances, yeah, sure. We take pretty much everything. And then down in the recycle area, it's the same thing. We take most recyclables.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's a great place, you know.
Yeah, it's a wonderful service, and
yeah, it is.
I appreciate your being part of it.
Right on.
And,
thank you very much.
Let's go check out the recycling, shall we?
Okay, good deal.
So can you tell our viewers a little bit more about sort of what are the goals behind recycling?
Well, obviously, you know, recycling is a manufacturing process. I like to say to folks in the public that think of yourself as a manufacturer when you're recycling. The material that we're collecting is is going to be manufactured in new products, and we're providing a commodity. Yes, it makes you feel good at the bin, but it's really, you're contributing to remanufacturing.
Okay. And so our goal really to make sure that we have as clean a recycling stream as possible, right?
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, not only in terms of the type of materials, but how we put it into our recycling, right?
Correct, yeah. Just like if you were making a plastic bottle out of brand new, fresh plastic, we'd like to provide fresh plastic, or at least as clean as we can of plastic, to the manufacturers that are reproducing these materials.
So rinse out your soda, rinse out your yogurt, all that good stuff,
Yeah.
make sure it's clean and ready to go.
Empty, clean, and dry.
Okay, so I know one of the things too in terms of recycling that's been kind of top of mind or a topic has been single-use plastic bags.
We're finding that they're becoming a major litter issue, and they also, in these bins out here, when they're going to the recycling facility and they're not supposed to be in these bins, they're tangling up machinery and making it really hard to produce that nice clean material that we're looking for in the recycling stream. So that's why we've taken steps to sort of cut back on people's usage of those. So bring your own bag when you go to the grocery store.
So I think the other part for me is knowing that often we're kind of, you know, I have this container at home and I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, it's got that little symbol on the back. Is that really recyclable? So I think important, one of the things that we need to really share with folks is, you know, how do we know what we can do with it and where it goes?
Sure, so plastics are always, that's one of the most common questions we get is, well, it's got a recycling symbol on it. Why can't I recycle it? Well, that symbol isn't necessarily a definition of recyclability. We tell folks to ignore the symbol and recycle your bottles, jugs, jars, and dairy tubs. And of course, like I said, they need to be empty, clean, and dry.
Maybe a visual could help folks to kind of get a sense of how to sort things and what we might be able to do with them. What do you think?
It might, and I think Caitlin's got a nice little challenge for you here to get you started on that.
Okay, well, let's check that out.
All right.
Thanks. We want to take some of the mystery out of recycling.
Yeah, every day people are at home and they're trying to figure out what can be recycled. A lot of people know that glass can be recycled, metal cans, paper, we've been doing this for a long time. Plastics can be confusing.
I think plastics still are a realm of confusion. So generally, when it comes to the rule of thumb for recycling plastics, we have jugs,
Yep.
jars, bottles, and
dairy tubs.
Dairy tubs. Okay, those are the four.
Yep.
But often we see, and I think, you know, I get this. This is probably pretty easy for most folks to realize it's not recyclable, even though it's plastic straws and that type of thing. The thing that's so confusing, and that we might get with takeout or whatever, are the clamshells. And so why is it that those aren't recyclable?
Well, first let me say we call these clamshells because they open like a clam. I think we kind of take for granted that people know what that means, but they've got a lid like that. So these plastics are not recyclable because they aren't the right shape. Our sorting facility is JMK Fiber in Tacoma, and the machines there are not intelligent robots. They were designed to look for specific shapes of things. So here in Kitsap, we sort by the shape: bottle, jug, jar, and dairy tub.
Okay.
Also, sometimes it's the case that these are really often dirty. You know, this had some wet food in there and people aren't cleaning them well. Or they're collected in such small quantities that it's not economical to recycle them with current technology.
So you mentioned dirty and sort of the cleanliness of the recyclables. What does that do if we then have basically unclean recyclables in the mix? Does that basically sort of ruin an entire batch?
It can. So here's an example of a dirty recyclable. A peanut butter jar. This is glass, not plastic, but what ends up happening is liquids, food, water, anything like that, they end up getting moldy. And when the sorting facility goes to sell the recyclables back to a manufacturer, the manufacturer will inspect those recyclables, and if they're too dirty, if they have too much moisture, if they're moldy, they could either reject those recyclables and say, I don't want those for my manufacturing, or they could pay a lower price. So it harms the whole system. As far as can it cause a whole batch to be rejected, it can if the moisture is too high.
Okay. So we want to make sure that it's a good product, good clean waste stream, good for the part of that manufacturing and the recycling process altogether.
Absolutely.
I see the styrofoam here. That's something that one might think that it's garbage, but there are opportunities to recycle this, right?
Yes, this is plastic, but it's hard to recycle it in its current form. Its current form is a foam. In Kitsap County, we're now doing styrofoam recycling collection events twice a year.
Okay.
So residents can come for free and bring styrofoam blocks and packing peanuts. And when we collect them separately like that, it's actually really easy to recycle them. They're squished down, they're extruded into an ingot of plastic, and then that's used to make picture frames, eyeglass frames, clothing hangers. Anything that's a plastic number 6 you see on it could have been an old chunk of styrofoam.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So make sure that you check out our next styrofoam roundup and for a neighborhood near you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that come into this facility that aren't handled here, whether it's household hazardous waste or everything that's collected goes to the Olympic View transfer station. So let's go and check that out. Welcome back. Joining me now is Marshawn Coppinger, who is the Transfer Systems Manager, and we're at the Olympic View transfer station. So Marshawn, we had an opportunity to visit one of our recycling and garbage facilities, which was kind of one of those access points for solid waste. But now we're kind of at the mothership, right? When it comes to where does all the municipal solid waste come and go and move on. So we saw where people can self-haul to, and we understand there's always curbside as well. So all of that is somehow coming here. So tell us what happens when I put my cart out at the station. Where does it go here?
Well, we have the alternative for curbside collection, which you kind of mentioned. That is collected by our certificated hauler, which is in unincorporated Kitsap County Waste Management.
Okay.
And then that MSW is brought here. From our RAGFs, which is the recycling and garbage facilities, we have customers come in. It's determined by volume, the cost of, and it goes into a container. Those containers are hauled by contract by Waste Management, our hauler, and then tipped on our tipping floor here at OVTS, pushed into a compactor, loaded into an intermodal container, and then that intermodal container is picked up by this top pick.
Yes, quite nice.
And then put onto the rail line, and then that is taken to Arlington, Oregon, which is in eastern Oregon, and it's a Waste Management owned and operated large landfill.
So you were talking about in 2002 was the last landfill that we had in Kitsap County was closing. And so why is that?
We're a smaller county. We have lots of shoreline and also our climate is very wet on the west side of the Cascades. So permitting for new landfills is very limited, if not non-existent anymore. So these large landfills are put in an arid area where they can be managed much better and less impact into the groundwater system.
And as we look around the Olympic View transfer station here, you see different kind of compartments, it looks like, where there's one area where the recycling currently comes. There's an area where it looks like it gets most of the commercial activity.
Right.
And then a spot for self-haulers.
Right.
So why coming here, why would I choose Olympic View versus one of the recycling and garbage facilities?
At our recycling and garbage facilities, that waste has to be hauled here, so there's an additional cost. So the cost impact is going to be higher at our recycling and garbage facilities. When you come to the Olympic View transfer station, it's weight-based. You're weighed in, given a swipe card, and then you're weighed out, and that difference is what you're charged at the facility, because that hauling issue is taken out of the equation.
If they went to the recycling and garbage facility, they may be paying more than if they drove a little bit further to Olympic View and just paid by weight.
Definitely. The optimal is curbside collection. One of the challenges that we do have here is on the weekend, everybody wants to come on the weekend, and currently our average on the weekend on one day is over 500 customers. So the time and involved in being in a wait line is problematic, where at our RAGFs it's a little slower moving, not, we still have quite a few customers, but it really comes down to the cost.
Yeah, so but if you're a weekend warrior, just be aware that you may be waiting a little while to make that handoff, where you could potentially do it more quickly at one of the rackets. So you were talking about that everything from the, whether it's Hansville, Olalla, or Silverdale, those recycling and garbage facilities, come here and they are already on containers. Do they stay in those containers, or do they get replaced into one of these other shipping containers?
They come in, we usually do by sets, the garbage, the MSW materials, they come in by truck as a set. They get tipped onto our tipping floor, that's the name, of each of those boxes. Then those boxes are then transported back to that, to one of the facilities.
Okay, so that gets combined with the other, we said MSW for municipal solid waste. So that gets combined with the other waste that comes into the facility. It's then compacted or packaged into these other containers that get loaded onto the rail.
Right.
But in there, we're really shooting for weight and having it as compact as possible.
In the compactor, the optimal weight usually is around 30 tons per container. Up on the tipping floor, you'll see a reader board, and you can tell where the platen in the container is, also the weight of that container as it's being filled from the tipping floor through the chute into that container and compacted. Once it reached that optimal full weight, and then it's closed and then moved by our top picks over to the rail.
Okay. So Marshawn, I was before we were talking about that sort of the tipping floor, there's an area at OVTS that's specifically where recycled materials go, but those don't get combined with the garbage, correct?
No, from the beginning source of where you do at your home and source separate out recyclables and your garbage, it's kept separate through the entire waste stream. Okay. What goes through the compactor here at the transfer station is strictly household garbage. And we have some contaminated soils and that sort of thing. But the recyclables definitely have another path to their end.
So where do they go from here?
They get transloaded here, and then they're taken to a materials recovery facility in Tacoma. Okay. JMK, which is also owned and operated by Waste Management.
Okay. How many tons on average do we have come through Olympic View on any given year?
Last year in 2018 was our largest volume, or largest tonnage, and it was 222,000 tons.
Wow. So partly, and I guess my assumption would be that it's somewhat connected to the economy. It could be connected to growing population. There's any number of factors that kind of drive those numbers.
Right. We definitely saw a dip when we had the recession. Our years of it did dip, and you could see a significant decrease.
I guess my assumption would be not everything should go into your garbage, whether you're doing curbside or you are bringing it here to Olympic View. What are those things that we want to make sure that people don't put in their garbage, and and what other options do they have?
And that's, a big concern when we're screening loads verbally, asking questions. It can't be liquids coming onto the floor. It has to hold a pile if you bring something in. The chemicals, household chemicals, pool chemicals, that if you combine them incorrectly, it can combust and create fire, an ignition to a fire. We've had a few different, from large to small fires here. We try to, avoid that at all costs. And so really the proper disposal message out there, we have what do I do with it, of how do you, it gives you great information of how to handle your waste.
Right, okay. So that would probably be, one option would be our household hazardous waste.
Correct.
Okay. So maybe we can go check that out in a little bit, but is there anything that you would want our viewers to know that I haven't asked you about as they sort of experience Olympic View transfers?
I think the overall for our solid waste division is reduction of what you generate. Be aware of what you purchase, the packaging, the sake of just buying stuff to have it, which it's going to go into the landfill. Trying to avoid putting anything extra.
Because we have limited space, limited resources.
Correct.
To fill that up. Well,
Correct.
Marshawn, thank you very much for taking the time to be part of the program today.
Thank you.
All right. So welcome back. Right now we are at the Household Hazardous Waste Facility, and joining me is Lisa Monroe. We just came from the Olympic View Transfer Station, and one of the points that was made is not all things should go into the garbage.
No.
So here we have household hazardous waste. What does that include? What is a household hazardous waste?
Maybe yard chemicals, household chemicals, anything that's dangerous to you or the environment.
Okay. Examples of that?
Household cleaners, some of your pesticides, insecticides, mouse poison.
Okay. Includes batteries?
Fluorescent light bulbs.
Okay. All of that stuff. So what do we have here today?
We have an example of a load that you'd bring in to us. We have the fluorescent lights. Mm-hmm. And we also have household batteries.
Okay.
We do ask people that they don't put the bulbs in with the batteries because the batteries tend to break the bulbs. Mm-hmm. And then you have a mercury exposure.
Okay. And I want to thank our hypothetical customer here for having a secured load. That's really important when you are transferring things around.
It's also important if you bring the chemicals in, everything's stored upright. Mm-hmm. If you don't fill the container, we have this one lined. Even though it's a plastic tote with holes in it, you have it lined so if anything does spill, it's contained.
Okay.
We have just something in here to keep everything upright so it doesn't move around. You want to keep it out of the weather so you don't get any deterioration of the product. And also no debris.
Okay.
We don't want to see any spiders, mouse debris, anything like that. And also it keeps all the labels clean.
Okay.
It's important that we're able to see the labels and see what's in there.
So are there limits to what somebody can bring in at any one time? Could they fill up the whole truck bed, or is it just a certain amount?
For a household, we ask that you keep it under 50 gallons or 50 pieces.
Okay.
Any 55-gallon drums, all of those require an appointment. And to do the appointment, you can either go online and fill out an online form, or you can call Kitsap 1.
Okay, so is this facility just for residents, or is it open to businesses as well?
Businesses can also come in, but it's by appointment only.
Oh, by appointment, okay.
Again, Kitsap 1 can give them the information. If they call there, they can go online, fill out an online appointment form. It's an inventory because we need to know what you're bringing in advance.
Okay.
And then someone will call you and schedule an appointment.
Okay.
And require any SDSs that
What's an SDS?
Material Safety Data Sheet is what
Okay.
it used to be called. And now they have a globally harmonized version. Okay. And it's just a SDS.
So it's just make sure that you are
Information
aware
on the product.
of what the product is. Okay, very good.
I have one more thing to point out here. Sure. Like I said, we ask that you bring it in. Stuff like this is dangerous. If you just throw it in a bag, you don't know what the product is. You don't want anything mixing together.
Right.
If you bring it in like this, you will be required to unload the bag in your vehicle. But see, you get like this and you start getting a reaction.
Whoa, okay.
So this is why you want to make sure that your products are packaged properly and upright. You can actually see we're getting a mild reaction in here. So this can actually render you unconscious going down the road. You get a little ammonia and bleach mixed together and it's the same as mustard gas.
Oh, wow.
So.
Okay. So for your own personal safety and the safety of you, who our public is interacting with, you want to make sure that everything is secured.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So what do we do with this then? What's the next step?
From here, we take it in the warehouse.
Okay, let's go check it out.
And then we'll be able to sort it into different containers by DOT regulation.
Okay. So Lisa, this looks like a typical collection of what someone might have at home and bring in. So what happens next?
Right now, Rosie is sorting everything into the proper drums by DOT regulation. When you're at home, all this product, it may do the same thing, but by DOT regulation, it can't be shipped together.
And DOT is?
Department of Transportation.
Okay, so they govern sort of the what?
Anything that goes down the highway.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so what are you looking for? Sort of the chemical components to it?
Yes.
I mean, or if it's
the
just
actual constituents or ingredients in
so
a product.
It's not necessarily the container it's in, but what's in it. Or
How we package it maybe depend on the condition of the container. If we're worried about whether it's going to break open during shipping, instead of going into a tote, we may seal it into a drum.
Okay. And so then the drums, these drums actually, once they're full, get sealed. And
sealed and weighed, and they get stored in the back of the warehouse until we have a semi-load.
Okay, and then what happens to those once we have a load ready?
We have a vendor that comes and picks it up from us.
Okay.
And then they further treat everything. We cannot treat anything here on site.
Okay. Well, I think one of the important things for me is that when we all have these, I think we're guilty of having a little bit left in the bottle and we stick it up in the cupboard, or like I've got a shed and I've moved a number of times. It seems like every time you move, you inherit somebody else's products that they left behind. But probably the safest thing for folks to do is bring it here. Bring it here.
As a residential customer, there is no cost to you.
Okay, no cost. That's a great price point for anyone who wants to make sure they're doing the right thing and being safe. That's perfect. So come here. It gets sorted. They have a cleaner home and environment and safer all around.
Yes.
Now I noticed that one of the things that we use a lot, are batteries.
Yes.
Right. So what happens to the batteries that come here to the household hazardous waste?
We pick all the batteries up from all the garbage facilities in the county, and they are brought here and we hand sort them.
Okay. Can we check that out?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Wow, so you weren't kidding when you said you had a lot of batteries.
Yes.
So what happens here then?
When we bring the batteries in from all over the county, they come back here and we hand sort them.
Wow. And so hand sorting, what different types? I guess I'm familiar with like lithium ion or whatever, but
there's alkaline, there's actually garbage batteries. We have to package everything so it can be shipped separately.
Okay.
And because it gets treated separately.
Okay.
And each one has a different shipping requirement.
Wow.
Some of them have to be individually wrapped and packaged before they can go into the larger drums.
Okay. So I would imagine they come in, if they're collected at all the different garbage and recycling facilities and you were kind of pulling them together, I would imagine they come in all different kind of containers, commingled with things. What's some of the things that you end up seeing?
This is some of the stuff that we've pulled out of our batteries.
Okay.
And this is a cleaner load. So we ask that people don't put it in bags. They take the batteries out of items.
Okay.
Wrappers, no bags, because we have to remove everything out of the bags to sort it into the different drums.
Okay. That makes sense. Very good. So I have to say there's one question that popped up in my head, and that was, what was the weirdest thing that ever came into the facility that you had to deal with?
Picric acid.
Picric acid, what's that?
The young man was cleaning up his grandfather's estate, who used to be an organic chemist, and it was something that he brought in. It had actually crystallized, and we had to have the Washington State Patrol Bomb Squad come on site, transport it for us, and blow it up.
Wow, that was that volatile?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. So I appreciate you taking the time to be part of the program today, but I want to make sure, is there anything else you want to make sure our viewers know about?
Yes, I would like them to be cautious with anything that says all natural or biodegradable. Just because it says that doesn't mean it's naturally safe for the environment. All natural, asbestos is all natural. Products like DDT are illegal. They've been banned for a long time, but DDT is also biodegradable. It breaks down into two very bad chemicals, DDD and DDE, which are even worse for the environment.
That's a good reminder for all of us to make sure that we are well aware of that. But Lisa Roosevelt, thank you so much for being part of the program today. And I just want to thank you for your time and attention. I hope you learned a lot in everything with solid waste. And yeah, it's not as simple as you might think. There's more to it than just popping something in your basket or your bin, and whether it's recycling or it's garbage. Stop and think about that a little bit, and now you know where it goes. So thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.